1969, we wasn't even born yet. I'm here today with, introduce yourself, my guest today.
Heath Chaffin, Prestonsburg, 2003.
And give us a little bit of your wrestling background accomplishments.
Well, I started wrestling in 7th grade, was the first year of the Prestonsburg program, and wrestled in 7th, 8th, 9th, and didn't wrestle again until my senior year, and placed 4th.
4th place from Prestonsburg, Heath Chaffin. First place from Campbell County, Ben Hines.
In the state at 125. I was also Prestonsburg's first district champion back in 2000. And, yeah, that's about it.
And in case you're wondering, he used to beat me all the time. It was like trying to wrestle Brock Lesnar. I can only imagine what those guys felt like, in the UFC. First time I saw Heath, 112 pounds at a tournament, he was my first opponent that day. I was like, what am I doing? What? I think I'm at the wrong weight class. But no, wrestling brought us together as friends, and we've stayed together as friends all this time. And your brother Nick will be joining us sometime to do his state championship video. But what we're doing today is a 1969 state championship review video. We're going to be watching the 112-pound state championship bout from 1969. It's going to be Doug Steger from Boone County versus Arvil Meyers from North Hardin. So, a couple of you have asked about the weight classes for 1969, so let's go over them real quick. 95 pounds, 103, 112, 120, 127, 133, 138, 145, 154, 165, 175, and heavyweight. And according to Tony Harris and George Turan from the Christian County videos, Hoptown videos, heavyweight was unlimited back then. So if you haven't watched George Turan, Bill Clarkson, and Tony Harris videos, all three of those are state champions from Hopkinsville, 1972, 1970, and 1974 respectively. Really good information. But we're at Louisville Trinity High School. We're on the Kentucky School for the Blind mat. That's what this mat is. And we've got, going to watch it here and just kind of give our opinion on the wrestling and how different it is. Now, let's do it. So as you can see, we start on the 10-foot line. The full-length leg singlets, headgear's optional. Got a little shot there. Trying to turn the corner. Nope, not yet. There it is, 2. Nope, not yet. Nope, not yet. Didn't give it.
When you think about wrestling back then, you almost think that it even had different basic concepts from today, but it really doesn't. Still the same, basic moves and takedowns, but definitely a lot more advanced now than it,
absolutely.
It was back then.
And as you notice, you can see the referee, instead of wearing wristbands, they point at the wrestler. And from what I've been told, the referees would also say it out loud, kind of like we do now, but it's just one of the many things that have changed over the years. So he's on top. I don't think stalling existed back then because, he's been on his hips for, 10, 15 seconds now, has not worked any offense. That's another thing, too, with all the 69 videos that we have. Very, very rarely do you see anybody run any type of top offense. You see, like, some neutral offense, that kind of stuff, but he's just now trying to run a half. He's been on his hips for, 25, 30 seconds.
It's hard to see the other side, but it looked like he was just trying to maintain some wrist control, and basically looks like the way I used to wrestle. Not too active, just try to be stronger than everybody.
And that I can attest that was very, very accurate. Another thing too about the full-length tights, man, those had to be hot. They had to be, because they didn't have the Under Armour material like we have or whatever, the compression type that we have then, or have now, I should say. And also something that Tony says it, Bill Clarkson says it. Let's get back to this in a second. Start the referee position.
So try to sit out there.
Yep.
Wasn't too effective.
The 1970s guys said that high school wrestling used to have a riding clock. if you was able to ride the wrestler without getting having escape on you or reversal, you got an additional point. It wasn't like in college where it reverses. It's just if you rode the person the whole period, if you after the choice, and you got an additional point, which was news to me.
So there was kind of a fat man roll there.
Yep.
Don't think any points have been awarded yet for it.
Doesn't look like it.
Now, in your opinion, would that be backs right there for the top guy? I mean, for the guy in control still in the black?
Yeah. He could have got probably a 2 count right there. He's trying to work. It was like he's trying to work his wrist free.
Would that be a stalemate in modern times?
Should be. There he goes. He's trying to hip over. Turn in. There you go.
So there was the reversal.
There you go. His
finally.
reversal. Point. I'm gonna try that this year. I'm gonna point instead of wearing wristband and see how good it goes over. We may have a throwback night or
I
something.
mean, what could go wrong?
Exactly. What could go wrong?
Fans are always so forgiving of refs
Yeah.
when they make mistakes.
Yeah. Exactly.
So looks like he is working an arm bar a little bit.
Wing, bar in. The headgear, you can tell they're a whole lot bigger on the ear and the side of the head than what we have nowadays. A whole lot bigger. Now,
Okay.
I don't know what happened here.
So, okay, there it is.
There we go.
It's got the half in.
Yep. Got a half in.
So it may not last much longer. Nope.
Nope, that must end of the period.
So are we in third period now?
I believe so. A lot longer on the referee's part of making sure everybody's set. Now, it's just a quick glance, make sure everything's working, and then blow the whistle. But these guys, it was a lot longer. Turn in a half. Bottom man's fighting off his back. And again, of all the videos or the whole state finals, you don't see any of the referees swiping near fall. Now, whether they're counting them out loud, this video doesn't have the original audio, so I just don't know. But bottom man's fighting really good. The top man, he's way too far over. He needs to get back. There you go. Settle back. Settle back.
It's not a fun position to be in for the bottom guy.
He used to put me in it all the time. I know all about it. Let's see.
Now, to your knowledge, was a pinfall same criteria?
As far as I know. Actually, Bill Clarkson, done the 1970 state champion from Hoptown, he said that he had some old rule books from the 70s he was going to try to get to me, so I can't wait to get those and get my hands on them and just see, what the rules, how different they are now as opposed to this type of wrestling.
Yeah, the one thing that interests me the most is the starting on the 10-foot line.
And you can even see that in like the 80s videos that we have. They start on the 10-foot. Friend of the channel, referee Andrew Dennison, said that they started in the 85 was his senior year. They started on the 10-foot circle. So that must have been. I'm not exactly sure when it come into the the regular start lines, but
So we had an escape there and then a
Yep.
restart from the official.
shoot in, trying to finish that single. Nope, trying to trip. Out of bounds, going back neutral. And you saw that a lot of this too, like the crawling. That must be it. So we got Boone County with the win. See if it 3-7. All right. So there you have it. That was the 112-pound video. Doug Steger from Boone County and Arvil Meyers from North Hardin. Wrestling was just so different then as opposed to what it is now. And you coach, you wrestled, you've been around the sport a very long time. Pretty much same observations I have is wrestlers in the 80s, the 90s, even early 2000s, they seem to be a whole lot stronger, a whole lot tougher, but the wrestlers that we have nowadays are just a whole lot more technical, better athletes, more athletic than what we had, back, I guess, in our day and before our day. But now kids, they're off-season tournaments, off-season camps, going here, going there, doing this type of camp, that type of camp. Do you feel the same way about that?
Well, I do agree. I think wrestlers today, other than possibly toughness, because that's hard to quantify, I do think that they're better in almost every aspect. Now, strength, of course, there's nothing to keep a guy in the past from being stronger, but I believe that the training is a lot better now. I do think sometimes we mistake lack of skill for other adjectives such as strength or toughness. I do think in every era, though, in the 90s, 2000s, to present day, there's going to be guys who could compete in any year. I do think on average, today's champions are better than years past. With that said, I think, if you put Jeremy Rhodes or Isaac Knable or other wrestlers like that into the current times, they would probably still have a great chance to win a state championship. Now, whether or not they will win multiple state championships, who knows?
Right.
You didn't have many young wrestlers like the Rainey twins back then.
Yeah.
And I think it's a competition, training, the access to information.
Yep.
I mean, you can go online and find anything. There's a camp every week all season, and the best wrestlers now wrestle year-round, as opposed to back then there was probably a handful. In fact, I had a conversation with Rusty Parks, and he said that in the 90s, Joe Carr Jr. was the only wrestler on the team that wrestled year-round.
I can believe that.
And occasionally a wrestler like Ian Horn or maybe Chris Dunn would go to off-season tournaments with him. But I think that's pretty commonplace. I'd say most Union County kids wrestle year-round.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The Cole Thomases of the world, Isaac Thornton. Actually, I believe I saw Isaac and other Kentucky wrestlers in Gatlinburg a few weeks ago wrestling.
Very possible.
And so I think that's one of the biggest changes. But, I mean, I do think overall wrestling is a whole lot better than it was when we were in school.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely prior to that.
And he's talking about, and I put it on my, I made a post on my Facebook the other day about, wanting to fantasy book, dream matches. I don't want to throw anybody's name out there or whatever. But, watching some of the 90s videos that we have as opposed to seeing kids now in real life, I'm just like, man alive. As a fan of the sport, it's like we got cheated of this person versus this person. I mean, it's just, like I said, I don't want to throw anybody's name out there, but.
Well, I have no problem doing that. And, it's really nice when you have a great possible matchup and they're in the same weight class or nearby. It would be cool to say, well, what about Joe Carr versus Bruce Stepp? Well, of course, that would never happen to the weight difference. But Tendai Charasika and J.J. Jude.
You read my mind.
Wrestled
I wasn't
the
going
same
to say
class.
it, but that's it.
And they were both super athletes, very strong, and they both won a lot of championships, a lot of matches. I believe, J.J. had a 100-plus match win streak.
He did, yep.
And Tendai, I'm not sure what his record was, but I know he didn't get beat very often. And there's just a lot of matchups like that. I'd like to see, a Jacob Merton.
Oh, my gosh.
Versus, a host of wrestlers.
Yeah.
A Cole Thomas versus Jacob Merton or Isaac Knable versus Cole Thomas. Wrestlers like that. Kyle Rochelle comes to mind. Another factor back then, which could affect these fantasy matchups today, was weight cutting. When we were in school, that was kind of the end of the weight cutting era. They started doing the body fat and hydration test, and I'm not sure if there was a descent plan yet, but maybe there was. But maybe around my senior year, they started trying to cut out the weight cutting. And I know it still happens to an extent, but back then there was guys who were cutting big time every week, and that probably wouldn't go on today. And so you might have a 103 or 112 now, or a 106, 113 that might weigh cut 10, 12 pounds, and back then you had guys cutting 20 plus pounds. And that would factor into those matchups, I'm sure. And there's also a one-day weigh-in at state tournament for years.
Yeah.
You know, I'm definitely not naming any names on this one, but you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, you know exactly who you're talking about.
But yeah, there were some guys who probably weighed, you know, 2 or 3 weight classes above what they wrestled under the lights on Saturday night.
Yeah.
But it's always fun to think about those matchups, and I would love to get you know, someone's opinions on who they think would win those matchups, but I don't know that we could get anybody on camera to say that.
Yeah. Off camera, I may have some opinions, but I'm never going to say anything on. We may have to get some people, like a committee or, you know, some people that we know, like, hey, you know, what do you think about this? And just do maybe our own video on that. But any closing remarks on 1969?
I mean, you know, it's I swear it looked like a match that I might have. Very basic, basically trying to hold someone down. It was very simple turns. I mean, the guy was a chicken wing and a wrist and a half. You know, it looks like just some straight-on shots. You know, nothing fancy, but, you know, that's the bare bones of wrestling, and that hasn't changed. But everything else sure has changed.
Absolutely. Now, my ending comment is going to be Jack Klein. I met Jack Klein at the Kentucky Wrestling Officials Association, which I knew Mr. Klein before, but he come up and talking about the video series, and he said that Kentucky wrestling started in 1962. The first state tournament was 64, but the first season of wrestling was, we had 62, 63, then the KHSAA adopted it as a sport. We're on the cusp of girls wrestling being adopted as an official sport. We're right there. We're one of the last states around us that don't have wrestling. We've already got the weight classes. As of this filming, we've already adopted the weight classes for to have a boys and girls state tournament with different weight classes. That's already been adopted. But if you have video of any state tournament, we know they made VHS tapes. At the end of this, I'm going to put a list of what I have acquired so far. If you have the years that I don't, or you have matches that I don't, please reach out to me. I'd love to get them. I'll convert them to digital for free, give you a copy. We just want them for history to have. That way we know that they're safe and they're accessible, because we just want to be able to tell people's stories. Also, before I go, if you know Mr. Doug Steger from Boone County or Arvil Meyers from North Hardin, you know their family, if they're still with us, please show them this video, have them reach out. I'd love to come meet with them. Maybe me and Heath can go down together and do the video with them. That would be great, I think, to get their take on it all these years later. That's all we got. We'll see you guys on the mats.